Your grandmother's kitchen held secrets that McDonald's will never know. Before drive-thrus replaced dining rooms and microwaves murdered Sunday suppers, American families gathered around tables where real food told real stories. 25 forgotten dinners seniors loved as kids, but you can't find them today. Tomato gravy over biscuits. Depression-era families turned flour, bacon grease, and canned tomatoes into liquid gold. The bacon was fried crispy, leaving behind precious fat that became the base for a roux. Flour was whisked in, followed by tomatoes and milk, creating a pink gravy that stretched a few strips of bacon into a meal for 8. Kids would soak their biscuits until they fell apart, creating a mess that mothers secretly loved watching. The gravy had chunks of tomato and flecks of black pepper that made every bite different. This breakfast for dinner saved families when money ran short and the pantry looked bare. The smell alone could make children forget they were poor. Modern families spend more on coffee than these entire meals cost. Cornmeal mush with molasses. Yellow cornmeal was cooked slowly with water and salt until it became thick enough to hold a spoon upright. Poured into a loaf pan and chilled overnight, it was sliced thick and fried until crispy the next day. Dark molasses was drizzled on top, creating a sweet and savory combination that satisfied every craving. Kids would fight over the crispy edges while the soft centers melted in their mouths. This was survival food disguised as a treat, using ingredients that kept forever in the pantry. Some families added a splash of milk to make it creamier. The leftover mush could be eaten cold or fried again for another meal. Modern polenta tries to be fancy, but it will never match the simple satisfaction of cornmeal mush. Crackling bread. Pork cracklings were mixed into cornbread batter, creating a bread that was rich with rendered fat and crispy bits of pork skin. The cracklings were made when lard was rendered, leaving behind golden brown pieces that were too good to waste. Kids would pick out the cracklings and eat them first, savoring the salty, crunchy texture. The fat from the cracklings made the cornbread incredibly moist and flavorful. This was another way to use every part of the pig while adding protein to simple cornbread. The bread was best eaten warm when the cracklings were still slightly crispy. Some families made this only during hog killing time when fresh cracklings were available. Today's gourmet bacon cornbread tries to recreate this simple perfection, but costs 20 times more than families paid for the real thing. Potato soup with Ribbles. Potatoes were boiled until they fell apart, creating a thick base that was stretched with milk and butter. Ribbles, tiny flour dumplings made by rubbing flour, egg, and salt between your fingers, were dropped into the bubbling soup. These irregular bits cooked quickly, adding texture and substance to an otherwise simple meal. Kids would count the rivels in their bowls, making a game out of dinner. The soup was seasoned with black pepper and sometimes a bay leaf if the family was feeling fancy. This was German comfort food that crossed over to American tables during hard times. A pot could simmer all day, getting thicker and more flavorful with time. Modern families buy expensive soup in cans instead of making magic from potatoes and flour. Beef heart stew. Beef heart was sliced thin and braised slowly with onions and potatoes until fork tender. This organ meat was cheaper than regular beef, but packed with nutrients that growing children needed. Kids didn't know they were eating heart if mothers cut it small enough and cooked it long enough. The meat had a slightly different texture than regular beef, but absorbed flavors beautifully during the long cooking process. Some families added carrots and celery to make it more like regular stew. The heart was often soaked in milk first to remove any strong flavors. This was nose-to-tail eating that provided maximum nutrition for minimal cost. The stew was hearty enough to feed large families on cold winter nights. Today's expensive grass-fed beef costs more than families used to spend on entire meals made from organ meats. Lard sandwiches. Pure white lard was spread thick on fresh bread and sprinkled with salt for a simple but satisfying meal. This was poverty food that somehow tasted better than it had any right to. Kids would eat these when there was nothing else in the house, and they learned to appreciate the rich, clean flavor of good lard. The bread had to be fresh or the lard would make it soggy. Some families added a thin slice of onion or a sprinkle of black pepper for variety. This was the fat that sustained hard-working people who burned calories faster than they could consume them. The lard was often homemade from butchering pigs, making it essentially free food. Modern families fear saturated fat while paying premium prices for avocado toast that provides the same calories and satisfaction. Sow belly and cornbread. Salt-cured pork belly was sliced thick and fried until the fat rendered out and the meat was crispy. The leftover grease was used to make cornbread that was rich and golden yellow. Kids would dunk the cornbread in the warm grease, creating a combination that satisfied every craving. The pork belly was much fattier than modern bacon, but provided the calories that working families needed. The cornbread was made in a cast iron skillet that had been heated with lard, creating a crispy crust that contrasted with the tender interior. This was two-ingredient cooking that created maximum flavor from minimal resources. Some families served this with molasses or honey when they had them. Today's artisanal bacon costs more than entire meals used to cost families who ate sow belly every day. Fried potatoes and onions. Sliced potatoes and onions were fried slowly in bacon grease until they were golden brown and crispy around the edges. The key was patience, letting them cook undisturbed until they developed a crust before stirring. Kids would sneak pieces while mothers weren't looking, burning their tongues on the hot potatoes. The onions became sweet and caramelized, balancing the starchy potatoes perfectly. This side dish often became the main course when money was tight. Some families added green peppers or leftover meat to make it heartier. The smell could draw neighbors from 3 houses away. A cast iron skillet was essential for getting the right texture, crispy outside, fluffy inside. Modern hash browns from a bag will never match the satisfaction of potatoes fried in real bacon grease. Creamed eggs on toast. Hard-boiled eggs were chopped and mixed into a white sauce made with butter, flour, and milk. The creamy mixture was ladled over buttered toast, creating a protein-rich meal that cost almost nothing. Kids would separate the egg whites from the yolks, eating them in different bites to make the meal last longer. The white sauce was seasoned with salt, pepper, and sometimes a pinch of paprika for color. This was another way to make a few eggs feed a large family. Some mothers added chopped chives or parsley when available. The eggs stayed tender, and the sauce was smooth as silk when made properly. This breakfast for dinner satisfied appetites and budgets equally. Today's brunch spots charge $12 for eggs Benedict, while this fed entire families for quarters. Wilted lettuce salad. Fresh lettuce was torn into pieces and dressed with hot bacon grease that wilted the leaves instantly. The warm fat was mixed with vinegar to create a tangy dressing that coated every leaf. Kids would eat salad when it was dressed in bacon grease, proving that fat makes everything better. The lettuce stayed slightly crisp while absorbing all the smoky flavors from the bacon. Hard-boiled eggs and green onions were added when available. This was the original warm salad, decades before restaurants made it trendy. The key was using the bacon grease while it was still hot enough to wilt the lettuce. Families grew their own lettuce in kitchen gardens, making this essentially free food. Modern salad dressings with their long ingredient lists can't match the simple perfection of bacon grease and vinegar. Johnny cakes. Cornmeal was mixed with boiling water and salt to create a thick batter that was fried like pancakes. These flat cakes were crispy outside and tender inside, perfect for soaking up molasses or gravy. Kids would stack them high and drown them in whatever sweet syrup was available. The cornmeal had to be good quality or the cakes would fall apart in the pan. Some families added a little milk or egg when they had them. These were the original fast food, quick to make and filling enough to sustain hard workers. The batter could be made ahead and fried as needed throughout the day. Native American origins made these truly American food. Today's gluten-free pancakes try to recreate what cornmeal did naturally for centuries. Fried salt pork with milk gravy. Before bacon became fancy, salt pork was the poor man's protein. Thick slabs were fried slowly until the fat rendered out and the meat turned golden brown. The leftover grease became milk gravy that was white as snow and twice as satisfying. Kids learned to cut around the really salty parts while savoring the crispy edges that tasted like heaven. The milk gravy was poured over everything: potatoes, biscuits, and even the salt pork itself. This meal cost pennies but filled bellies for hours. Fathers would eat 3 pieces while mothers pretended they weren't hungry. The leftovers were chopped up for breakfast hash the next morning. Today's nitrate-free bacon costs more than entire families used to spend on groceries. Sauerkraut and sausage. Homemade sauerkraut was heated with sliced sausage until the flavors melded together perfectly. The sour cabbage balanced the rich, fatty sausage while providing probiotics that kept families healthy through long winters. Kids learned to love the tangy flavor, especially when it was mixed with mashed potatoes. The sauerkraut was often made in late fall when cabbages were harvested and needed to be preserved. German families brought this tradition to America, where it spread beyond ethnic communities. The dish improved with reheating, making it perfect for leftovers. Some families added caraway seeds or apples for extra flavor. This was functional food that prevented scurvy and provided nutrition when fresh vegetables weren't available. Modern families buy expensive probiotics in pills instead of eating naturally fermented foods. Rabbit fricassee. Wild rabbits were cut into pieces and braised slowly with onions and herbs until the meat fell off the bones. The cooking liquid became a rich gravy that was served over mashed potatoes or biscuits. Kids fought over the tender back legs, while adults appreciated the flavorful dark meat. This was free protein for families who knew how to hunt and trap. The rabbit was often soaked in salt water first to remove any gamey flavor. Carrots and celery were added when available. The slow cooking method made even tough old rabbits tender and delicious. Some families made this into a stew with potatoes and vegetables. Today's expensive free-range chicken can't match the flavor of wild rabbit that cost nothing but time and skill to obtain. Blood sausage and apples. Sliced blood sausage was fried with apple slices until both were caramelized and tender. The sweet apples balanced the rich, iron-heavy sausage perfectly. Kids were often tricked into eating this by focusing on the sweet apples. The blood sausage was made when pigs were butchered, using every part of the animal to avoid waste. This dish was especially popular in German and Polish communities. The apples were usually tart varieties that held their shape during cooking. Some families added onions to the mix for extra flavor. This was nose-to-tail eating before it became fashionable in expensive restaurants. The combination provided protein, iron, and vitamins in one satisfying meal. Modern squeamishness about organ meats means families miss out on this nutritious and delicious combination. Suatach. Lima beans and corn kernels were cooked together with a little salt pork or bacon for flavoring. This Native American dish became adopted by colonial families and remained popular through the Depression. Kids would pick out either the beans or the corn, depending on their preferences. The vegetables complemented each other nutritionally, creating a complete protein when eaten together. Fresh vegetables were used in summer, dried or canned versions in winter. Some families added bell peppers or tomatoes when available. The dish was substantial enough to be a main course or served as a side with meat. The name came from a Native American word meaning boiled corn kernels. Today's frozen succotash in grocery stores is a pale imitation of this fresh, simple combination. Ham hock and greens. Smoked ham hocks were simmered slowly with collard greens, turnip greens, or mustard greens until both were tender. The pot liquor was as prized as the greens themselves, providing minerals and flavor that sustained families through hard times. Kids would soak cornbread in the pot liquor, getting nutrition and flavor in every bite. The ham hocks provided just enough meat and fat to flavor a huge pot of greens. This was African American soul food that fed families for days on very little money. The greens were often mixed, whatever was available from the garden or could be foraged. Some families added hot pepper flakes or vinegar for extra flavor. The long, slow cooking method made even tough greens tender and delicious. Modern organic greens cost more than these families spent on entire meals. Codfish cakes. Salt cod was soaked overnight to remove excess salt, then flaked and mixed with mashed potatoes and eggs. The mixture was formed into patties and fried until golden brown. These crispy cakes were a way to make expensive fish stretch to feed large families. Kids loved the crispy exterior and flaky interior. The salt cod had to be soaked and rinsed multiple times to make it edible. Some families added onions or herbs to the mixture. This was New England cooking that spread throughout the country as families migrated. The cakes could be made ahead and reheated, making them perfect for busy mornings. Served with baked beans and brown bread, they made a complete meal. Today's fish cakes in restaurants cost more than these families spent on groceries for weeks. Persimmon pudding. Wild persimmons were gathered after the first frost when they were sweet and soft. The pulp was mixed with cornmeal, milk, and eggs to create a pudding that was baked until set. Kids would climb trees to gather the orange fruits, learning to avoid the ones that weren't fully ripe. The pudding was sweet enough to be dessert, but filling enough to be a meal. This was free food that required only the knowledge of when and where to find it. Some families added spices like cinnamon or nutmeg when they had them. The pudding could be eaten warm or cold, making it versatile for any meal. Native Americans taught settlers about persimmons, sharing knowledge that sustained families for generations. Today's exotic fruit in grocery stores costs more than families used to spend on entire desserts made from foraged ingredients. Pickled pig's feet. Pig's feet were boiled until tender, then pickled in vinegar with spices and onions. This preserved meat provided protein that lasted for weeks without refrigeration. Kids would gnaw on the bones, getting every bit of meat and gelatin. The pickling process made tough connective tissue edible and flavorful. This was another example of using every part of the animal to avoid waste. The feet were often served cold as a snack or appetizer. Some families added hot peppers to the pickling liquid for extra flavor. The gelatin from the bones was nutritious and helped heal joints and bones. This was poor people's food that happened to be incredibly healthy. Modern bone broth trends are rediscovering what families knew instinctively about getting nutrition from bones. Vinegar pie. When lemons were too expensive, vinegar provided the tartness for this Depression-era dessert. Eggs, sugar, butter, and vinegar were beaten together and baked in a pie crust until set. The result was surprisingly delicious, tart, sweet, and custard-like. Kids couldn't believe something made with vinegar could taste so good. The vinegar flavor mellowed during baking, leaving just enough tartness to balance the sweetness. This was making do with what was available, turning pantry staples into something special. Some families added vanilla extract when they had it. The pie was often made for church suppers and community gatherings. It proved that creativity could overcome any shortage. Today's expensive imported lemons make lemon pie commonplace, but this ingenuity has been forgotten. Bread pudding with hard sauce. Stale bread was soaked in milk and eggs, then baked with sugar and spices until custard-like. The hard sauce was made with butter, powdered sugar, and vanilla, creating a rich topping for the simple pudding. Kids would fight over the crispy top layer while savoring the custardy center. This was the ultimate way to use up bread that was too stale to eat fresh. Some families added raisins or nuts when they were available. The pudding could be made with any kind of bread: white, wheat, or cornbread. It was served warm or cold, making it perfect for any season. The hard sauce was a special treat that made ordinary pudding feel elegant. Today's artisanal bread puddings in restaurants charge premium prices for what families made from scraps. Hazenfeer. Wild rabbits were marinated in vinegar and spices for days, then braised slowly until tender. This German dish became popular among hunting families who needed ways to make wild game more palatable to children. The long marination process tenderized tough wild meat while adding complex flavors. Kids would eat this when they wouldn't touch regular rabbit because the vinegar marinade made it taste completely different. The dish was served with red cabbage and dumplings for a complete meal. Some families added wine to the marinade when they could afford it. This was gourmet cooking made from free ingredients for families who knew how to hunt. The preparation took days. but the results were worth the wait. Today's expensive game meat in restaurants tries to recreate what families made from backyard hunting. Sweet potato biscuits. Mashed sweet potatoes were mixed into biscuit dough, creating orange-colored biscuits that were slightly sweet and incredibly tender. These were often made when regular flour was running low because the sweet potatoes helped stretch the wheat flour. Kids loved the natural sweetness that didn't require any jam or honey. The sweet potatoes were usually left over from dinner, mashed and ready to use. These biscuits stayed moist longer than regular ones because of the vegetable content. Some families served them with molasses or honey when available. They were substantial enough to be a meal on their own when times were really tough. The orange color made breakfast feel festive even when money was tight. Today's gourmet bakeries charge premium prices for sweet potato biscuits that families made from garden surplus and necessity. Possum and sweet potatoes. Wild possums were trapped during winter months when their meat was cleanest and fattest. The whole animal was roasted slowly with sweet potatoes arranged around it, creating a feast that cost nothing but time and skill. Kids learned not to ask what they were eating until after they'd cleaned their plates. The meat was surprisingly tender and mild when prepared properly, tasting more like pork than game. The sweet potatoes absorbed the drippings, becoming incredibly flavorful and rich. This was survival food that sustained rural families through the hardest times. Some families soaked the meat in salt water overnight to remove any wild flavors. The possum had to be skinned and cleaned carefully to avoid contamination. Today's expensive free-range meats can't match the satisfaction of protein that literally walked into homemade traps. Head cheese. Pig heads were boiled until all the meat fell off the bones. Then the meat was chopped fine and mixed with the cooking liquid to create a jellied loaf. This used every scrap of meat from the head, including the tongue and cheeks, which were actually the most tender parts. Kids would eat thin slices on bread, not knowing they were consuming what would horrify modern children. The natural gelatin from the bones created a firm texture that sliced perfectly when cold. Spices like black pepper, sage, and bay leaves were added for flavor. This was made during hog killing time when nothing could be wasted. The loaf was stored in cool cellars and lasted for weeks without refrigeration. Today's expensive charcuterie tries to recreate what farm families made from scraps that would otherwise be thrown away. Squirrel dumplings. Gray squirrels were cleaned and cut into pieces, then simmered slowly until the meat was tender enough to fall off the small bones. Flour dumplings were dropped into the bubbling broth, creating a hearty stew that fed large families from just 2 or 3 squirrels. Kids learned to eat carefully around the tiny bones while savoring the rich, nutty flavor of the meat. The dumplings absorbed all the gamey flavors while adding substance to stretch the small amount of meat. This was another free protein source for families who knew how to hunt with .22 rifles or small traps. The cooking liquid became a flavorful broth that was almost like gravy. Some families added wild onions or herbs they found in the woods. Today's gourmet game restaurants charge premium prices for what rural children ate as regular weeknight dinners. Beef stroganoff. Beef stroganoff arrived in American kitchens through a fascinating journey from Russian aristocracy to middle-class dinner tables. The dish represented sophistication and worldliness when exotic cuisines were rare in suburban America. Families felt elegant serving tender strips of beef in a rich sour cream sauce over egg noodles, often reserving it for special occasions or when company came to dinner. The preparation required patience, slowly browning the beef, sautéing mushrooms until golden, and carefully combining the sour cream to prevent curdling. Many home cooks added their own touches, incorporating onion soup mix for deeper flavor or using cream of mushroom soup as a shortcut. The result was a dish that transformed everyday ingredients into something that felt luxurious, making ordinary Tuesday nights feel like celebrations. Scalloped potatoes? The art of layering thin potato slices with cream and seasonings created one of America's most beloved side dishes. Every church potluck, family reunion, and holiday table featured at least one casserole dish of golden, bubbling scalloped potatoes. The technique seemed simple, but required skill, slicing potatoes uniformly thin, creating a roux that wouldn't break, and achieving that perfect balance between tender potatoes and crispy top. Families often added their signature touches. Some included ham or bacon, others layered in cheese, and a few adventurous cooks added herbs from their gardens. The slow baking process filled homes with the comforting aroma of cream and potatoes, creating anticipation that made the wait worthwhile. What made these potatoes special wasn't complexity, but the time and care invested in their preparation. Chicken divan. Chicken divan emerged from the elegant divan Parisian restaurant but found its true home in American casserole dishes, combining chicken and broccoli in a sophisticated cream sauce that elevated everyday ingredients. The dish represented the 1950s fascination with combining convenience foods with fresh ingredients to create something that felt both modern and traditional. Tender chicken breasts were layered over bright green broccoli spears, then covered with a rich sauce made from cream of chicken soup, mayonnaise, and curry powder. An exotic touch that made families feel cosmopolitan. A generous sprinkling of cheese and breadcrumbs created a golden top that cracked to reveal the creamy layers beneath. What made chicken divan special was its ability to transform a simple combination of ingredients into something that felt like fine dining, proving that sophistication didn't require complicated techniques. Corn chowder. Summer corn chowder captured the essence of the season in a bowl, combining fresh corn kernels with potatoes, onions, and cream to create a soup that was both rustic and refined. The best chowders began with corn on the cob, where kernels were carefully cut away, and the cobs were simmered to extract every bit of sweet corn flavor. This corn-infused stock became the foundation for a soup that tasted like summer itself. The preparation required patience, slowly cooking onions until translucent, adding potatoes to simmer until tender, and carefully incorporating cream without letting it curdle. Many families added bacon for smokiness or herbs from their gardens for freshness. The result was a soup that celebrated the season's abundance while providing comfort on cooler summer evenings when families gathered on porches and around kitchen tables. Potato pancakes with applesauce. Every German and Eastern European family had their version of these crispy golden cakes. Mothers would grate potatoes by hand on metal box graters, their knuckles often bearing the battle scars of rushed breakfast preparations. The grated potatoes were mixed with a beaten egg, a handful of flour, and salt, then formed into flat patties and fried in whatever fat was available: lard, bacon grease, or precious butter. The key was getting them crispy outside while keeping the inside tender. Fresh applesauce made from backyard apple trees provided the perfect sweet complement to the savory, earthy potatoes. Families made these on weekends when they had time for the labor-intensive grating process. Children would compete to see who could eat the most, while parents appreciated how a few potatoes could create a filling meal. The sizzling sound and aroma of these pancakes cooking meant comfort and abundance, even in lean times. Green bean casserole. Holiday tables weren't complete without green bean casserole. Canned green beans mixed with cream of mushroom soup and topped with French fried onions, then baked until bubbly. This wasn't sophisticated cooking, but it was reliable, crowd-pleasing, and could be assembled hours ahead of time. The magic was in the simplicity. 3 ingredients combining to create something greater than the sum of their parts. The crispy onions added texture and flavor that elevated humble canned vegetables into something that even children would eat. Some families considered it a tradition, others just practical cooking. But everyone agreed it wasn't really a holiday meal without at least one casserole dish full of this comforting side dish. Carrot pineapple gelatin salad. This colorful salad brought sunshine to Depression-era tables when fresh vegetables were expensive. Mothers dissolved orange gelatin in boiling water, then stirred in crushed pineapple with its juices and finely grated carrots. Some families added chopped nuts or coconut when budget allowed. The mixture was poured into decorative molds and chilled until firm, creating a sweet, fruity side dish that children actually wanted to eat. The combination of textures, smooth gelatin, tender carrots and chunky pineapple made every bite interesting. Families served it at holiday meals, church potlucks, and Sunday dinners when they wanted something special. The bright orange color looked festive on the table, and the sweet flavor provided a pleasant contrast to savory main dishes. Mothers appreciated how this salad could be made ahead of time and how it encouraged children to eat vegetables without complaint. Rolled oats meatloaf. When ground beef was expensive, creative cooks extended it with rolled oats, creating meatloaf that was both economical and delicious. The oats absorbed moisture and fat during cooking, creating a tender, moist texture while adding subtle nutty flavor. Mothers mixed ground beef with uncooked oats, beaten eggs, chopped onions, and seasonings, then shaped the mixture into loaves and baked them until golden. The oats helped the meatloaf hold together while stretching the meat to feed larger families. Some cooks glazed the top with ketchup or brown sugar for extra flavor. Leftover slices made excellent sandwiches the next day. Children never suspected their favorite dinner contained breakfast cereal, while adults appreciated how filling and nutritious the dish was. The meatloaf could be made ahead and reheated, making it perfect for busy family schedules. Each slice provided protein, fiber, and complex carbohydrates in one satisfying portion. Tuna stuffed tomatoes. Large, ripe tomatoes became edible bowls for this refreshing summer meal. Mothers would hollow out the tomatoes, saving the pulp for other uses. Then, fill the shells with tuna salad made from canned tuna, mayonnaise, chopped celery, and hard-boiled eggs. Some families added sweet pickle relish or chopped onions for extra flavor. The stuffed tomatoes were chilled and served on lettuce leaves, creating a complete meal that felt elegant despite its simple ingredients. The combination of cool, creamy filling and juicy tomato was perfect for hot summer days when nobody wanted to cook over a hot stove. Children enjoyed eating the edible bowl along with the filling, while adults appreciated the fresh, light flavors. The dish provided complete nutrition with protein from the tuna and eggs, vegetables from the tomato and celery, and healthy fats from the mayonnaise. Each tomato looked like an individual portion, making the meal feel special and personalized. Sour milk biscuits. Before milk spoiled completely, resourceful cooks used slightly soured milk to create incredibly tender, tangy biscuits. The acid in the sour milk reacted with baking soda to create extra lift, resulting in biscuits that were higher and fluffier than those made with fresh milk. Mothers mixed flour, baking soda, salt, and lard or butter, then stirred in the sour milk until just combined. The dough was rolled out, cut with a glass or biscuit cutter, and baked until golden. The slight tang from the sour milk created a complex flavor that paired perfectly with butter, jam, or honey. Families served these biscuits hot from the oven for breakfast, alongside fried chicken for dinner, or as a simple snack with coffee. Children never realized these delicious biscuits were made from milk that was past its prime. The recipe represented the practical wisdom of waste not, want not cooking, turning potential garbage into golden treasures. Hominy with butter and salt. This Native American corn preparation became a staple side dish in many households. Dried corn kernels were treated with lye to remove the hulls, creating large, puffy white kernels with a unique, chewy texture. Mothers would heat canned hominy in a saucepan, then stir in butter and season generously with salt and pepper. Some families preferred it fried until lightly browned, while others served it creamy and soft. The mild corn flavor provided a neutral base that paired well with strongly flavored main dishes like ham, sausage, or fried chicken. Children were often puzzled by the unusual texture, but most learned to love its corny sweetness and satisfying chew. The dish was filling and inexpensive, providing carbohydrates and some protein. Hominy could stretch other ingredients in casseroles or soups, making it valuable for feeding large families on tight budgets. Each kernel burst with authentic corn flavor that reminded families of their agricultural roots. Creamed spinach on toast. Fresh spinach was transformed into a creamy, comforting dish that even children would eat. Mothers would cook fresh spinach until wilted, then chop it finely and fold it into a rich white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk. The mixture was seasoned with salt, pepper, and sometimes nutmeg, then served hot over toasted bread. The combination of earthy spinach, creamy sauce, and crispy toast created textural contrast in every bite. Families served this as a light lunch or dinner when meat wasn't available, or as a side dish with simple proteins. The white sauce made the somewhat bitter spinach palatable to young taste buds, while the toast provided substance and carbohydrates. Adults appreciated getting iron-rich vegetables into their children's diets through this appealing preparation. Each serving felt substantial and satisfying, proving that vegetables could be just as filling as meat when prepared thoughtfully and served generously. Creamed celery casserole. This elegant side dish elevated humble celery into something special enough for holiday tables. Mothers would slice fresh celery stalks and cook them until just tender, then layer them in a buttered casserole dish with a rich cream sauce and buttered breadcrumb topping. The cream sauce was made from butter, flour, milk, and sometimes chicken broth, creating a velvety coating for the tender celery. The dish baked until the top was golden and bubbly. The mild, fresh flavor of celery paired beautifully with the rich cream sauce, while the crunchy topping added textural interest. Families served this alongside roasted meats or as part of elaborate holiday spreads. Children appreciated the creamy sauce, while adults enjoyed the sophisticated flavors. The casserole could be assembled ahead of time and baked when needed, making it perfect for entertaining. Each serving provided vegetables in an appealing, comfort food format that made healthy eating feel indulgent. Navy bean pie. This unusual dessert transformed humble beans into a surprisingly sweet and satisfying pie. Mothers would cook navy beans until completely tender, then mash them smooth and mix with eggs, milk, sugar, and spices like vanilla and nutmeg. The mixture was poured into pie crusts and baked until set, creating a custard-like filling with a unique, creamy texture. The beans provided natural thickness and subtle flavor while adding protein and fiber to the dessert. Families served these pies when they wanted something sweet but couldn't afford expensive ingredients like nuts or chocolate. The pale color and smooth texture disguised the bean base, often surprising guests who couldn't identify the secret ingredient. Children enjoyed the sweet, custard-like flavor, while adults appreciated the nutritional value and economy. Each slice provided an unusual but satisfying end to simple meals, proving that creativity could transform even the most unlikely ingredients into memorable desserts. Molasses taffy. This old-fashioned candy required patience and teamwork, but created sweet memories along with sweet treats. Mothers would boil molasses with sugar and butter until it reached the proper temperature, then pour it onto buttered platters to cool slightly. When cool enough to handle, family members would take turns pulling the taffy, stretching it repeatedly until it became light-colored and chewy. The pulling process incorporated air and changed the texture from hard to tender. The finished taffy was cut into pieces and wrapped in wax paper for storage. Children loved participating in the pulling process, working in pairs to stretch the warm candy back and forth. The deep molasses flavor was intense and satisfying, providing sweetness that lasted long after eating. Each piece represented family cooperation and old-fashioned fun, creating traditions that lasted far beyond the candy itself.